Okay, welcome. This is the How to Build Your Own Home live chat. We are now live. I'm going to talk with a couple of thoughts that have been coming to my mind. And then as questions start to come in, I'll answer those. Several have already come in through email, through messaging, through YouTube and my live site and some other sites. Forgive me if I have kind of a groggy throat. I got over a sore throat and just getting better from that. The economy. I want to talk about the economy just briefly and to kind of let people know where we are with things. We are in what's called a contraction, economic contraction, credit contraction, a business contraction. In my live chat today, there is a link for a video that came out just a few hours before we went live today. And his name's the Economic Ninja, really funny guy. He's very comedic, but he's always on top of it. He's very boots on the ground kind of guy, and he really understands real estate as well and building because he was in the building industry as well for quite some time. So he gave a report on the 15 businesses that are closing stores nationwide, huge stores, box stores, food stuff stores, you name it. So it's in the link in the below the description for this video. So I suggest everybody check that video out. It's very, very informative. And I was in the Home Depot today. I call it the Home Depot store. And I noticed that OSP was $12. Just literally almost a year ago, it was over $30 a sheet. That says something to you about where the economy is right now. And so when you find that business and the economy starts to contract like it did just after 2008, at the end of 2008, we got into 2009, 2010, there was this contraction. And it was a great time to build. But did many people build during those times? Not many people built. In fact, people lost their jobs. Contractors went out of business because they overextended themselves. Right at 2009, even 2010 would have been one of the greatest times to build a home because you could really get the pick of the litter. You could actually decide for yourself who you wanted to hire, and you would actually be able to negotiate on those bids. So we are entering in that same time period, that same opportunity. In fact, it's going to get even better to build later on in the fall. Just hold your horses. If you're deciding on whether or not to build now or in the fall is actually going to be really, really powerful. So why is that? Well, we're going to go into an election cycle next year, so they don't want the economy to be too bad. But there are people pushing the buttons. I've written something called The History of Money, and I will upload that to my other website, and I'll try to let everybody know the full history of where we are financially, the history of currency, where we are now, and where we're headed in the future. These things are kind of important to know because if you're going to build something, if you're going to build a home, let's see here if I'm going to find that information. If you're going to build a home, it's very, very helpful to know where you are historically with the economy, because that's a guiding factor. As from myself as a builder, I'm constant when I go into box stores, when I go into supply houses, when I go into lumber yards, I'm constantly looking at the price of things that given day, and that's a real deciding factor. And I also see gas prices start to increase as springtime and summer starts to hit us. Gas prices start to go up. And again, that's going to affect the price of lumber. It's going to affect the price of just about everything. So these are barometric pressure points that I look for. And that's why I think that in the fall, prices are going to even come down even further. Gas goes down cheaper in the fall. It's higher in the summer. When it goes down, it takes about 30 days for that to hit a lot of products that are out there in the marketplace. So if you're looking to build this year, this early spring is a good time, but the fall is going to be even better, provided your economics are in shape, provided that you have a stable job or stable income and all these things. If all of that's in play and you're in a good situation, this later part of this year is going to be a great time to build a home. I had a couple of questions that came in through my email. Uh, there's a person that sent a question. It says, "What about pre-cut lumber for framing?" I've seen that. It's kind of a new thing that's come along. The problem is that although they depend upon heavy dependence on technology, a computer program to determine where those cuts are, they use CNC machines to cut that lumber, mark it, actually mark the end of the lumber that tells you where that's going to go. If you get a framer who's willy-nilly and not really thinking through it and just starts cutting lumber no matter what, then it destroys that whole plan. And it works great on a simple plan. The simpler the plan, the better. If you start getting into some real complex stuff, then that gets to be a different beast. And but I've seen that technology. It's kind of interesting. I'm kind of watching it to see how it comes along. But I think most owner builders, they want to build a home because they want to do some customization to it. That's what I found. I think about 80% of the owner builders that I meet actually want more control, more custom work, more features they want to tweak in the process of building their home. And others just want to build something because out of necessity, this is the only way they're going to get into something, and they're going to try to do it as affordably as they possibly can. We got a question here from Matt. He says, "This is great news because late summer, fall is when I plan to start." Great. Late summer, even in the fall, is a great time to start. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to start in the fall, you're going to want to try to get that whole thing uh, dried in before Christmas. Before Thanksgiving is even better in some climates. If you can do that, boy, you've got a shell, you've got an encased shell, you've got everything protected. Other subcontractors can come in there and work through late December, January, February, and March. They can get all the heating, air conditioning, ventilation system done, all the water system and sewer system done, all the electrical and all the boxes for lights, etc., all your low voltage, all that can be done in the cold of winter. You don't want to do framing, and you don't want to do concrete, and you don't want to do excavation. You don't want to do big items in the winter. You want to do those in early spring or late fall, and then use the winter time or the hot summer months to do all the mechanical. Just keep that in mind. If you time it right in your area, if you're in a colder area, more northern, you want to break ground in August, literally August, as early as August. The earliest would be late July. And then you've got that 2-3 months of opportunity to get that shell, to get that foundation in. So something to think about. I had several questions that came in through my email. And a lot of students have been asking. I had a video that came. Oh, a video that came. I produced a video a long time ago. It says the biggest cost in your home. It's the exterior wall. And I'm doing a lot of investigation on how best to avoid subcontractors coming to do a little bit of work on that wall. For example, somebody stands there to frame. I've got framers now on a job site up north. Another person stands there to install insulation. Another person stands there to install drywall. Another crew, in fact, comes and does tape and texture. And they sand it down and they tape and texture again, possibly 3 times and maybe up to 4 times, depending upon how smooth you want it, like a level 5 drywall. Then another person comes by and primes it, tapes it off, and then they come back and do the top coat, a final coat of the color. That's just on the inside. So the inside, you got the framer, you got your insulation person, and then you got your drywall hanging crew, which is typically separate from your tape and texture crew. And then, of course, you got your painter crew. 5 different crews just to do the interior of the wall. And then on the outside, you've got your sheeting, which is part of your framing crew. We're not going to count that right now. And then you've got your vapor barrier and your lath for stucco and shiplap, batten board, brick, whatever it may be. Now we're up to 7 different contractors, 7 different crews, or 7 different contractors coming to do something in this section of the home. You compare that to the flooring. Flooring has 2, maybe 3 with the excavator, concrete, and the flooring person, if it's a slab on grade. If it's not a slab on grade, then it's excavation, and then your flooring or your foundation, and then your flooring or subfloor, and then your flooring. 4. So the big expense in a home is that exterior wall. Having to have so many people come to do something on a wall frame right here. Roof is even less. Roof is your framer and your roofer. That's it. Your framer and your roofer. You may have your insulation person blow insulation on the attic if you want to, and then maybe some drywall and paint down below. But we're still dealing with five top uh, um, subcontractors, if you will. The most expensive is that exterior wall. So what if you could build a home that eliminates two, maybe three of those subcontractors? That's what I'm looking for as a builder. I'm looking for technologies that replace one, two, or maybe three of those subcontractors. I have an idea for some builds I'm actually working with three clients on right now. And we will actually frame the home, and the framers will install the insulation on the outside of the home, leaving a post beam, rough sawn timber look on the inside. Of course, it's a different look, but I can eliminate my insulation subcontractor completely and take all that money and put it into another subcontractor, which is the framing. And it's not that much more for them to install the framing. It's a SIP panel, structurally insulated panel, where you've got OSB and some sort of an insulation, could be closed cell, open cell, rock wool, just about anything inside here. And then sometimes they have another fixed piece of sheeting on this side, and they just affix it to the outside of the home. Provided it has the R value that you need, that eliminates the subcontractor. Guess what else it does? It also eliminates your painting subcontractor, because we're not going to paint inside some of these homes. It's all rough sawn timber. They're just going to leave it as is. So I eliminate that as well. Now I've eliminated two subcontractors. And the electrical subcontractor does everything underground, and we do all that at the same time they do their underground. And I think we can save a lot of money on the electrical as well. These are things I'm looking forward to in the future, is trying to cut down that cost on that exterior wall. And if somebody's smart, they can start building technologies where one or maybe two subcontractors replace several by installing that wall system, whatever that wall system is. This is why I'm not a fan of they call them what do you call it? ICF forms, insulated concrete forms, where you got styrofoam on the outside, then you got concrete in the inside. Why does the outside have to be styrofoam? Why can't the outside be a finished wall? Why can't, and I've seen technologies like this, but it hasn't really taken vogue. And why can't that inside almost be the same? That's what I'm saying. If you can find a way to make that more efficient to build that exterior wall system, start looking at that for the future. That's what's going to be the biggest savings on building your own home. Let's answer a couple of questions. I've got quite a few coming in here. Um, let's see. Yeah, Matt, that's great. You're building in Maryland. You're going to want to jump ground on that sooner. You've got a shortfall, if I'm correct up there. Let's see. KP Singh says, I keep seeing on Reddit, etc., that building is going to be about the same as buying already built home. Is that even true? Uh, yes and no. It depends on where you're building and where you're buying. If I was in maybe Malibu, it might be cheaper to buy something new rather than build. However, if I'm in some parts of the country and I'm about ready to buy a 1970s home or 1980s home, the efficiency on those homes are so terrible that building new would be actually more effective down the road, because you could actually do a cost savings on your utility costs. Depends how long you're going to be in the home. How efficient is the home going to be? Right now, I'm a big fan of buying old pioneer homes and buying old homes and restoring them. That would be very, very beneficial. You improve the community, you lift the community. So restoration, remodeling, definitely, yes, that's going to be a big positive. That probably more beneficial than building new. So, uh, Yearly writes, is it possible to build under an LLC, take the tax benefit deductions of the build process, and then sell or deed the property to yourself? That's exactly what I've done. All my personal homes, because I'm the general contractor, my wife hired me to build these. She's actually a realtor. So she would hire Kel's Construction, my company, and I would actually build those and flow those through. Now, keep in mind, you can only show a loss on an LLC 2 of the 3 years, or you're going to get a red flag. Don't trust me, I'm not a financial advisor, but that's just what I've heard. You want to check with a financial advisor. My company's made a profit the past 2, 3 years, but I'm going to probably go into a situation where I'm going to do some write-offs. I'm actually building a cabin under my license for my family, and you can contract to each other. There's nothing that I've ever heard that stipulates where one part of a family cannot hire another part of a family and therefore write off some of the costs on that. So again, talk with your tax person. But I tell all my students to get an LLC and then go in to the lumber yards and supply houses, and then request for a builder or a contractor application for a contractor account, and say, this is my business. I've got dozens of students who've created phony emails, not phony, they're just like joesbuilding@gmail.com. And then they set up a website which costs maybe $25, and it's a couple of pictures on there, and then people see that you're a builder. You just call yourself a builder. So go into business for yourself and use the tax advantages. And I could say a lot on that. Let's see. Yearly writes, is it possible? Let's see the next one here. God, I'm way behind on these. Can you upgrade from the self-managed package to the GC consultant package and only pay the difference? Yes, I've had several students do that. In fact, I actually like it when students do that. They go through the first steps course and they go through the self-managed package, and they get as far as they want, and they need some additional help. I've done that quite a bit of times. They just need to notify me and let me know, and I invoice a different invoice on that. David B writes, well, heck, you're here instead. Yep, I'm here. Even though I had a slight flu, I'm here. I hope that's what you mean. I'm not sure. Gauge, I have bifocals and they're transition lenses, so I have to turn up to read some of this stuff here. Would that example be constructed out of 2x wood framing, or is it timber framed? What example? I'm not sure. That the rough sawn, it'd be timber frame. So it would actually be almost 5x5, 5.5x5, 6.5x post beams. On the outside of that frame would be TNG shiplap, which is a siding. And then we put the insulation on top of that. So the inside of it, that would actually look like, in fact, I have a picture right here. This is what the outside would look like. Imagine that being your home. Imagine wrapping that whole existing timber structure with an insulated panel, and then covering that with shiplap or batten board or some of the same stuff there. But the inside looking like this. It would look just like that. Imagine living in that, but nice and toasty warm in the winter and super comfortable in the summer. I think that is a big cost savings. I could be wrong, but I'm investigating it right now for some clients, and I'm excited about it. I think it could come a long way. The benefit with timber framing, and there's a video on the YouTube about this, where it's half the amount of lumber that you would typically use for a home, because the purlins here are so far apart. We're talking 8 feet apart from here, 8 feet apart from here. You don't have all that 2x6, 16 on center studs everywhere. They're bigger beams, bigger post beams, and so it's really cool. So that's what I'm looking into. Here would be the upstairs on that build. That'd be an upstairs. And it goes in line with my love for attic trusses, attics utilizing spaces up above. So I'm investigating that. Hopefully it will come about. Thumbs up from David, and then Esme. Thanks, David. May says, I'm way behind here. Sorry. Would you get plumbing fixtures from HD, Lowe's, Home Depot, or Lowe's instead of some specialty shops like Ferguson? I was told by my designer not to get them from HD and Lowe's. Okay, here's a couple of things real quick. I would go with a place like Ferguson or even Standard Plumbing or any of these places and really talk with them. A lot of owner builders are using tankless water heaters, and they're also using recirculation in their plumbing systems so that it gets the master bathroom hot first. If you've got the wrong water head in that shower, the tub is going to get hot fast because it's got an open outlet that's pretty wide. But a lot of those constricted valve heads that are inside the cartridges inside the showers don't, for some reason, they don't get hot very fast. So you send it, you're there forever. So I never scrimp on hardware when it comes to plumbing, especially for the master bathroom. I make sure I get the best I can. And you're going to have all that purchased and there on site before the plumber even gets there if you select it yourself. Or just go to Ferguson or just go to Standard Plumbing Supply, or just go to any supply house. I've used Ferguson quite a bit. I've used Standard Plumbing quite a bit. I have contacts at both of those, and I just tell my clients to go there, select everything, tell them you're with Kelch Construction, and they know me, and then everything's listed there and everything's paid for. So the plumber's connected to that account. So when the plumber comes, they just grab everything from Ferguson. They've got it all ready for you, and then they go to the job site. Now it may be a little more, but you're saving some unnecessary issues with regard to plumbing, like I mentioned with the hot water in the master bathroom. You get something cheap, you're going to pay for it. So I have some clients that bought their own stuff. They're sweet people. I love you guys. And they just found out their shower's not getting hot. And so I told them it's not the water heater because the pump is getting nice and hot, but it's the shower head. It's just not designed right. So be very careful on getting cheap stuff. You want to get stuff that's been proven that it can service your need. Let's see. Kip's sign says Northwest. Yeah, I know the Northwest pretty well. I went to school up in the northwest part of California, just 50 miles below the Oregon border, and that was considered the Northwest. You're probably in Washington somewhere. Do you think the GC consultant package is just as valuable for someone building in Canada? Yes, it's the same process. In fact, it allows you to build a stem wall, slab on grade, walkout basement. But in Canada, you're going to be doing a stem wall. You get a frost depth, especially in the middle part of the country, where you have a nasty frost depth, and that stem wall is going to allow for that. You will not be wanting to build a slab on grade. So it's the same process. Again, the whole how to build your own home is all designed to help you slide in and be an owner builder and know the system, know the scheduling, know the budgeting, know about what a draw sheet is, to know about what how to meet a budget, how to find subcontractors, how to building science, framing, checklists, videos for everything. There's like 89 different checklists in the whole thing, flow charts, you name it. It gives you a real advantage on just being able to walk on a job site and downloading a plumbing or downloading an electrical or downloading a framing checklist and having something to look at and not feeling like a nincompoop. You are informed. You have something in your hand to look at. And so when you look at the job before you pay a subcontractor, I want to check this off. I want to check that off. I want to check that off. Just check off, go to the website to How to Build Your Own Home and look at the free home site selection checklist. Get that. It's a free checklist. That's the first one. And I make sure I put everything on a single page. I don't have multiple pages. If I have a multiple page, it's a whole nother subject matter in the same genre. Like framing, I'll have 5 or 6 different checklists. And you'll print them all up, go to the job site and check it out. So yeah, it's effective for just about any client. I have people in South America and the UK that have been using the program. So Wally asks, hey Wally, again, I remember for you from last week. Within your community of students, are there any Canadians? Yes, I do. I've had some. I should send an email out and say, hey, are there any Canadians that are currently building? And I can message them. There's almost 6,000 students in that program, and I'm sure there's quite a few from Canada, even close to Buffalo, New York. I've had some students in New Jersey, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, a lot of those areas. G. Dot, I think I remember you from a week or two ago. A lot of this inflation was greediness. Does that ever go down? Sometime I want to take just a 30-minute dive into the history of money. I actually did it with my business networking group this morning. And it's an 18-page document. It's on my website. genuineoptimist.com. It's in my download section, and it's never gone down. Guys, I feel like I could go into a long tangent there. I don't want to do that to you, but it's always there's booms and busts. We're going into a fourth turning. If you haven't read the book, The Fourth Turning, read that. We're going into a fourth turning to actually transition into a new first turning. So check that out. Study cycles. Study Ray Dalio. He's really big on cycles. You should, as a builder, even an owner builder, because you're dealing with a huge purchase of hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should have in your portfolio a knowledge base of economics. Excuse me. And you should be following a lot of great economics. Mark Ross, I think it's Mark Ross on YouTube. He's phenomenal. He just is really well informed. He teaches people a lot of great stuff. I listen to Dan with I Allegedly. He does really great on the boots on the ground, boots on the ground reporting in California. The Economic Ninja. There's several. I've got about 10 to 15 people I source to kind of always tell me where the economy is. I don't listen to mainstream media or what I call dead stream media. I don't listen to them at all. David writes, you would probably need to be licensed in your state if you make an LLC for yourself, though. Not really. Because you're an owner builder, and you can be an owner builder, and you can have an LLC, and that LLC can be the object that you're actually utilizing to run invoices through. Because you're not building that home for another person, you're building it for yourself. Keep in mind, one of the universal caveats to being an owner builder throughout the entire nation, in most states that I've researched, they just don't like you to sell that home within 2 years after completing it, after getting your certificate of occupancy, because then you're considered a builder or a general contractor. But in states like California, you can actually build a fourplex as an owner builder. And I believe you can do 2 of those in a 2-year period of time. And you can start renting them out, and you can literally bypass a general contractor. My second student I ever took on as a consultant was doing that in San Diego, was going after a fourplex. So let's see. Wally asks again, I'm not sure if I fully understand the 2 out of 5 years rule. That's just the government looks at businesses, and if you're constantly writing a loss every year, right, that's showing that the business is not profitable. It's not making a loss, although it's beneficial to you in the long run because you're writing off the expenses for the LLC to build something for yourself. But if you have that LLC for a long period of time, they just don't like to see it run a loss more than twice in 5 years. Just research a financial advisor; they will tell you. But since you're just going to do it for a year or 2, it doesn't seem to be that much of a difficulty. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I have to say that emphatically. Talk with a financial advisor; they can tell you. I can just tell you what I've done, and I've used an LLC even before I was licensed. So, see, Melissa. Melissa's asking, Wally, where were you planning a trip to Niagara Falls, Canada side? I don't know what she's asking there. Melissa's my wife. She's chiming in right now. Hi, wife. Smile. Another question. If you guys do plan a visit, me and my wife would love to have you guys over. Watching this as family with kids right now. That's great. Hello, family, watching that. That'd be awesome. If you secure funding through a hard money lender, are you required to pay a minimum of 12 months interest, even if you finish the construction project earlier than expected? It depends on the terms of the contract you have with a hard money lender. Hard money lenders will typically only give you money if you have final permanent financing at the end of the build. But the bank or the lending institution is not willing to give you funding to build the home. I actually completed a home just like that. My clients were able to secure hard money through a lender that I brought to them, and that private lender lended them the money to build the home, which we ended up being under budget on. And then at the end of it, they closed with permanent financing. That's the only way a private lender is typically going to give you some money, is if you can show that you've got permanent financing lined out. So Uh, let's see. Juan asks, do you ever go up to the Salt Lake area? Yes, I was up there about 2 weeks ago. I'm very familiar with that area. I built in the Park City area, which is east of Salt Lake, about 35, 40 minutes up there in the ski area. I built several monstrous, um, very custom luxury homes in that area. So I'm very familiar with Salt Lake. So, yeah. Have you ever had someone dedicate a gravesite on their land? I plan to, or have you dealt with land not being able to sell because it had a grave? Um, my wife might make a comment below regarding that because as realtors, you can't do what's called stigmatize. You can't stigmatize a property to keep it from being sold. For example, you can't say you don't want to live there. There's weird people next door. You can't do that kind of thing. But I do know people who have done that. I know people who have buried their parents on their own property, and you may have to move it if you want to sell it. Or I know a gentleman who has his girlfriend buried on his commercial job site. He doesn't tell many people that, but I know exactly where she's buried. So it depends on how far you want to go with it and how long you plan to have the property in your hand. But that's a good question. It's an interesting one. Uh, Yuri asks, 2 out of the 5 years, if you live owned the property for 2 years of the last five, you can exclude capital gains up to $250,000, up to 500,000 if financial only of the profit from cap gains. Yeah, I believe that. So you can double check with your financial advisor. But yeah, find out. I know that on the capital gains, I think it's just 2 years. That if you sell it within the 2 years, you're going to have a capital gain. So you don't want that. You want to have it seasoned, and it has to be your primary residence. You have to actually live in that. For example, my parents just sold their home today, and they had capital gains, but they're not paying any taxes on that because it's their primary residence, and they lived in it for over 10 years. So again, all that changes every year because it's so political. You just want to check and stay abreast of that. And if you follow a lot of financial people on the boots on the ground, people that are always talking, you eventually get a feel for what the laws are because so many people are talking about them. Right. David asks, I saw you another channel, a YouTube channel. The guys had dug a beam slab, rain washed it out after they had it inspected, then fixed the damage and didn't get re-inspected. City might make them tear it out. You're correct. Uh, they actually need to have physical eyes on the ground. Even if you take a picture of it, which is good, it's great to document the before and after. But if they didn't see the rebuild or the reconstruction of it through the process where they're actually supposed to have inspections, then they may end up having you tear that out. I've seen horror story after horror story. And don't assume inspectors are going to accept your videotape or your pictures. They won't. I've been through this so many times on so many inspectors in 3 different states. I thought everything would be great if I just send them a text or send them an image or drop off pictures showing that we got the work done. They won't accept it because now it's based upon my third party analysis, not their third party analysis. So a verified third party has to be there on site, and they will actually take the pictures with their phone or their camera, and they will upload them to their site. So don't try to step in for the inspector and take a picture and say, "Yeah, I got it all done." So we went ahead and poured the concrete. No, you didn't, because they have to actually be there. I had a home where we had to pour concrete over a certain section. It was a bay window, and they did not prove that they were there. They couldn't prove that the inspector actually saw it or that there was any rebar in it. So I had to really fight hard for that. They wanted me to bust out the concrete. I had to fight real hard, and I said, "I tell you what, there's nothing but number five rebar laying all the way around. There's even cut rebar all over the place. It was a number five rebar because I dug a little chisel into the concrete to expose a little bit of the rebar, and they saw that it's a number five rebar. And we brought a thermal imaging technician in, and they actually did a magnetic, whatever you call it, penetration of the concrete and showed that we had rebar where it needed to be. I fought hard and long for that, but they approved it and passed it off, even though they didn't see it before concrete. But you don't want to go through that headache. I've been there. It's not fun. You want to try to stay away from that. Make sure your inspectors are there. I have a sheet that's a downloadable sheet that indicates the most common inspections for most areas. It's pretty thorough. It's really overkill. But if you have a question on inspections, you can check that, or you go to the county or city building department and say, can you give me a list of all the inspections I need to call in for? And you check them off as you go forward, and you have no problem. Okay. I'm planning to buy a utility tractor, not an excavator, for land digging, clearing, pool excavation, etc. Expecting to pay off with more builds. Any insights on this approach? Well, the thing he says a utility tractor. I've had both. um, if you do a tractor, it's got to be a big one. But the problem with a tractor is it's not going to reach deep enough into the pool. A good excavator can reach twice as far as a backhoe, and it can go in much deeper. For example, I have a 30 R series John Deere backhoe, and I can only get down about 8 feet max to dig. But the track hoe I have, which is 1 or 2 sizes bigger than that, but it's a track hoe, I was able to get down 14 feet. So how deep do you really need to go? That's your caveat. And then the problem with the track hoe is you can't move a lot of dirt. So I like, if I were to have my druthers and I was just going to start over, I try to find a nice big backhoe. So I have a kind of a front uniloader up front, moving dirt. Then I can turn around, sit on the back side of it, and then trench where I need to trench. It's a little more complicated to step up, move the seat, turn around, do your thing. But if I were to buy one tool, it would be that. But I've got both. I've got a mini skid steer where I can move a ton of dirt, and then I have a track hoe where I can dig trench, and then I have a thumb on that track hoe so I can grab rocks and place them and move trash and all that kind of stuff. So I guess if you're going to get one piece of machinery, it'd be a bigger backhoe than you probably are comfortable with. So something to think about. I could talk forever on that subject. I have a lot of questions here. Harold asks, some famous use, farmers, not famous. That's my wife, Melissa. Hi there. Hey, sweetie. What are you doing?
Good. I'm on a little delay, but I came in for the 2 to 5 years. If you want to talk about that.
Oh, what do you have to say about the 2 to 5 years?
Okay, because I know people were asking about it, and this is
she's a great realtor. She knows her stuff.
It's a really good strategy if you're going to build a home or even buy a home, and you have it as your primary residence and then you have a loan on it. You get the lower interest rate. You live in it for 2 years, and then you rent it for 3 more. That's within the 5, and then sell it. You lived in it for 2 out of the 5. So that's what they're kind of saying. You always have to go through, talk to a financial advisor or a tax person, but that's what I understand, and that's how we work things at the office. And everything's different for everybody individual tax-wise, but on a general rule, if you have lived in the home for 2 years out of the 5 and then sell it, you can, and you're a couple, you can be up to $500,000 without the capital gains. If you're just single, it's $250,000. So I hope that helps.
But check with your financial advisor, because we are not financial advisors.
That's the general rule.
That's the general rule. Thanks, honey. I appreciate that. A lot of builders actually use their own build as cash flow. So if they are building and it's a little slowdown and they don't want to lose their employees, they'll just go ahead and get a loan to build a new home, sell their home they're in, and move into another one. I knew a builder in California where he would buy a lot in a subdivision, which would be the first phase of that subdivision, build his home, and live in it for just 2 years, or however long he needed to, and then sell it or rent it out and build another one. He rolled that several times, and pretty soon he actually paid off the mortgage of his final home. I've seen a lot of builders do that. So, I see. Okay, really good questions here. Any cons of building a community well? Found a lot that has a community well, but the neighbor has a pool Haha, I should probably check if that well produces enough of water. I had an interview with a gentleman. It's going out next week. He's going to talk about water and how to find water. Please listen to that. It's going to probably come out next Tuesday. He's actually talking with the state of California right now on water, and he's blowing politicians' mind on how to get water without a witcher, to go out there with the intuitive art of a witcher to try to find water. He's actually got technology that's verifiable where you literally can find water and almost guarantee it. Watch that video. It's going to come out next week. It's called Primary Water Technologies. That's the name of the company. But I actually interviewed him here in my office, so stay tuned to that one. Let's see here. I'm gonna scroll up here. Let's see here. Adam asks, how much do you recommend for contingency? Where can you put extra money in the budget to fudge factor? Okay. Very good question. That's probably an undeserved good question. It's one of the best questions you can ask as a general contractor. When I put together a budget, okay, maybe I can show you a budget here. This is a home I completed, and I have the budget way in the back here, if I'm correct. It's in the front. Oh, it's not here. This is a home I just completed. The binder I just completed, and I put contingencies in 3 places, and I put a big percentage contingency over the entire build at the bottom of the budget. And most banks are going to want for 7 to 10%. If you can go 10% and factor that into your budget, it's going to make things go much better. I'm also a sneaky hermit, sneaky person. In the budget, I always factor in additional money for excavation, concrete, framing lumber, and framing labor. If those are over on all 4 or even just 1 or 2 of them before you get into all the other mechanical and finish, it's going to make that build very uncomfortable. So let's say my lumber or my labor for framing is $28,000. Kind of big home, $28,000. I'll round it up to like 30 or 31,000 for additional contingencies, and I know that I'm covered there. I'll do the same thing with excavation. I know this sounds like, man, I can't afford that. Then shrink the home so that you can accommodate for contingencies. If you don't, you're going to run over. And the typical thing for owner builders, it's the biggest mistake, and I'm going to drive this home. The biggest mistake owner builders make is they try to save at the budget phase. I can do that myself. I don't need that in the budget. I can do that. And boy, they eat their shorts. The best thing you can do is to actually put a real working budget in there. So even though you don't have a general contractor in there, put a general contractor fee in there. Put every cost imaginable that an actual general contractor would actually put into the build of the home. Then at the end of the home, you say, yeah, I built this myself and I saved $89,000. How do you know? Because you had a realistic budget to start with in the first place. Otherwise, you're not going to really know what you can save. Now, how do you get around lending? How do you qualify for lending with all those additional contingencies? You have to design your home to fit contingencies. You have to architecturally build the home so that it can meet that cost per square foot and allow for contingencies. If you don't do that, and if you're not that disciplined and you run the risk, you're going to be over, and then you're going to have a second mortgage on your home, or you may not even be qualified for a second mortgage. You don't want to run that risk. On just about every home I build, I have hidden contingencies. The other thing I recommend on that, I can talk forever on this, is never line item to zero. Meaning when a budget comes in, you put in the exact amount of budget. You don't want to do that. If there's an issue, or if they may run into rock by doing the excavation for underground plumbing, they may charge you $300. You get hit more times than you can shake a stick at. No matter how much I plan and prepare for a home, there's always something that's just unforeseeable. That's why I put contingencies in there. I've been under budget on the past 3 homes I finished just this year, under budget on all of them. That's because I'm overly cautious, and I don't budget to zero. As the invoices or the estimates come in, I know better. I know I need to make sure I'm covered like that. You want to be under budget at the end of your build. Oh, it's such a great feeling. If you're over budget, you just kick yourself in the pants because you started off on the wrong foot. So let's see here. Seeking to maximize space with a walkable flat roof like a terrace, besides a structure that supports snow, what other factors would I consider? I would say don't do it. Don't build a flat roof. They are about 7 to 14 years maximum on their maintenance level, meaning that's about as far as they will last. There's not enough ventilation under that roof to keep it cool, and it's the constant heating of that roof that causes the nails and the substrate on top of the wood straight to expand and contract, expand and contract. That's why you see a lot of asphalt shingle roofs with no ventilation on their roof. The heating and contraction of that causes the nails to just rip apart through the material. So I'm not a fan of flat roofs. I don't like them. They're a maintenance nightmare. Put a pitched roof on there. I know it may be architecturally appealing to what you want to do, but would you like a roof that has a maintenance problem in 7 to 14 years, or would you like to have a roof that has a maintenance problem in 15 to 25 years, or would you like one that's got a maintenance-free roof for 100 years? I just go the gamut on there, and I choose 100 years every single time. So, JL asks, question: as a builder, would you rather build a house with a gable roof or a hip roof? Are the costs similar? It's a very good question. There's a couple of factors that you want to consider. If it's a hipped roof and the entire roof is a hipped roof, you've saved on a couple of things. First of all, when that hip roof comes down, you don't have to have scaffolding for a gable end to go for a second story. I've seen homes that have a second story. My Pioneer home is got a second story on it, and it's got hipped roofs on it. And I don't have that extra stucco or gable end to accommodate stucco on or shiplap or brick or rock or whatever, any kind of fascia material. I don't have to deal with that. So the guys that come to do my home, it's all in one level, typically within 8 to 9 feet, and it's easy to reach. So if you're doing it yourself, you don't want to have scaffolding, do hipped roofs. That's the biggest benefit. The other caveat is that hipped roofs are a little more complex to frame. They're done all kinds of different ways by truss plants. And I've seen hip roofs that have kind of a whole truss system that just lays flat, and then they put the sheeting on top of all that. There is some stick build, a little bit of extra stick building. Stick building means they have to do it by hand, but not that much with a hip roof. And it's easier to roof too. You're not going so high. And hip roofs are better for steeper roofs because you've got more safety features with the hip roof than a gable end, but it may not be what you're actually looking for. But it's really aesthetic. But I'm more a fan of hip roofs than I am gable roofs. As a builder, I am. One day, I'd love to hear how you transition from school teacher to general contractor while providing for a family and starting a new career field. Thanks again. I can kind of briefly talk about that, and it may be because I've seen a lot of owner builders transition into a trade after they build a home. They get very good at something, and they transition into that trade. I left higher education back in 2005. I was a financial advisor, international transfer advisor, adjunct instructor, college recruiter, state competition manager for all kinds of different athletics and stuff like that. And I left because I ran into somebody who moved my cheese. I don't know if you know what that means, but somebody comes and takes you and moves you over here and says, you're going to be just as good and just as happy over here. So we find it best in our interest to take you out of this position and move you over here. But I was having fun here and I enjoyed it. That was my cheese. So somebody moved my cheese, and they moved me out of all that I was doing into financial aid with 12 other women, or 12 women, not other. I wasn't a woman. And I didn't like it. I couldn't teach. I couldn't mentor. I couldn't help with competitions. I couldn't do anything. He wanted me gone. So I read the writing on the wall, took a job as a produce clerk in a local grocery store. And that lasted a couple of months. And then I took a job teaching again in Indian reservation That was not a good thing. Left after 2 weeks. Came back and took a job as an apprentice electrician. I had a, a master's degree at the time, perfectly functional academic in a way, and became an electrician. I said enough of this. I was very handy. I liked physical work. And then after about a year of that, doing electrical homes throughout my community, I took a job with a nonprofit. And that nonprofit was in bad straits. They had a bad system. All the invoices were tucked into a garage, and they were only paying the invoices that were knocking on the door to get paid. This was a nonprofit housing organization, so they were running a self-help USDA program. Got them out of hock, saved the program, secured another funding for multiple millions of dollars for like 63 homes, built 63 homes myself, all under budget in a 3-year period. And then 2008 hit, and I was let go. And so I was forced to kind of go into the trades. I became a handyman, became a general contractor, and struggled to get my name out there for a long time. It is a struggle. I dare say that. But I had electrical, I had roofing, landscaping, excavation, some framing under my belt. I knew a little bit of plumbing. So I was able to pick up stuff. And so you want to pick up as many trades as you can. I talk with a lot of young men that want to be general contractors. And I tell them, you need 3 trades. And one of them has to be the mechanical, plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. You need to pick up one of those. And then you need to pick up something big, excavation, dirt work, concrete, or framing. If you pick up one in each of those categories, you're going to be a very powerful general contractor. You're going to be able to walk on a site and see problems, elevation issues. You're going to see structural needs. You're going to see a lot of stuff. But if you come out being a general contractor by being a painter, or I hang drywall, or I do finished carpentry on the inside, but you don't know all this structural and mechanical stuff, you're not a very good general contractor. In fact, that's how you find a general contractor. A good one is how much experience they have in those fields. That's how I would answer that question. I hope I answered that. It's kind of a long way about it. That's a great explanation. Thanks, Melissa. That's Wally thinking, Melissa. Jordan writes, recently seen your video on Omniblocks. I'm wondering if you have any information on how these hold up on heat retention during the winter months, more specifically Canada. You want to talk with Denny with Omniblock. He's the president. He indicated to me that any of my students are welcome to reach out to him in the home, and he's going to be using it on his website. And he's sending me some free dinners to take my wife out to dinner. So I'm excited about that. I'm missing something here. What are the best moments for us to build efficiency? Let's go up here. I'll skip my question. Let's go to Harold. Harold. Oh, some framers use 1 2x as a windowsill. Some use 2x ? Why? Which method do you use? Well, you don't want to use a 2x4 wall. I'm not a fan of 2x4 walls. It's not a great system. I'm thinking what you're talking about is building it out and capturing it. If you have a thick brick or other fascia that's very thick, sometimes they'll use the thicker 2x material because they've got to get that window further out so that the rock doesn't come impinge upon the window. So if you were to look out the window and you see all this rock outside there, you typically don't want to do that. That's one of the reasons why they do that, as they try to push the window and all that. It's called fenestration. They push the fenestration out so they can capture that. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Hope that answers your question. So Yuri asks, any cons on building a community well? Oh, I already got that question. Let me go. Okay. I missed that one question here. See, Wally asks, if you ever put in an elevator, what kind of a structural planning do you need to be prepared for a 3-4 elevator? Basement, 2 second floor. I actually have students doing this in Nevada, and they had to have the specs all in place. The elevator operating company, the company that's going to bring it and install it, they have all that specs, and they give it to the engineer, and the engineer incorporates all those specs inside the structural build of the home. So you need to select that first. You can't just, and then you can't go to a structural engineer and say, I want an elevator there, they say, what kind of elevator? Can you help me with that? There's a lot of different companies out there. I don't have any right off my head, but you can do some research and find out. There's quite a few companies out there. And mention that you're uh, owner builder or a residential home, and they'll know what you're talking about. So, yeah, thumbs up if you like the stream, please. I appreciate that. It really helps with the algorithm. That's very nice of you, David. I appreciate that. Have you ever moved a kitchen exhaust so its shell is over the stove, but the unit is in an attic utility room for noise reduction and easy servicing, like an inline exhaust? Um, I have done that with makeup air. I have not done that with an exhaust over a stove, but I understand what you're talking about. You want to make it quiet. The only problem is if it's buried in a wall and you turn it on, you may not know that it's running because it could be that quiet. And if it's not, if it's running, then what happens is it collects dust and sawdust around those blades. Then it gets all gunked up, and eventually you're going to have to replace that or clean it up. I like the ones that have grates above. You pull the grates out, rinse them off, maybe put them in the wash and put them back up in there so that the dust and oil and grease is not going to get back into the fan unit pulling the air. You want that protected. So if it's not protected and it doesn't have some filter system on it, then it'd be really bad to replace that fan in there. Whereas a lot of them, you pull out the grate, you can see the fan, you can reach up there and kind of replace it. Very much like you do bathroom fans. If you look at bathroom fans, you can take off the trim off that, look at the whole motor system, say, oh, I'm just going to pull that out and put a whole new one in. So you want ease of access that way. So let's see. If mini split AC and heat is a better option than a conventional HVAC system, you would not have the duct system. Then how do you manage appliances like dehumidifier, humidifier, and HRV? Um, that's through makeup air. I did a post on this when I talked about the zip systems on YouTube. I'm not a fan of closing up the home perfectly, solidly. I'm not a fan of that. Because what's going to happen, I've seen some homes where they were so sealed up, the only area that wasn't perfectly sealed up was a electrical box. So it was the only way where cold air was coming either through the outside or from the inside. It was coming in. And if you have a condensing surface, it's called the cold air condensing surface. And if that happens and you've got a leak and it's condensing water inside the wall system, you're going to produce rot and mold and all kinds of stuff there. So I know I've talked about totally sealing up a home. I know there's a lot of builders that are really going after that to make the perfect, well sealed up home. I'm just not a fan of it. I've seen too many mistakes. It's kind of like a pitcher of water, and it's got some ice and water in the pitcher, and you put that inside your home where there's a leak coming through the wall, and that air is going to go across that pitcher of water, and it's going to condense water on that pitcher of water, and it's going to create moisture. Well, you've got insulation, you've got electrical wires, you've got junction boxes, you have all kinds of stuff. Even the wood itself is a condensing surface, and so water droplets can grab a hold of that, stay, and not dry out. So the more you seal up the home, the more risk you have of creating a high pressure situation where there's a lot of water or air, not water, air and water molecules coming through that area and dropping itself inside the wall system. And when it does that, that's when you've got a problem. So I'd rather have a home breathe. And the best way I can imagine this is imagine putting a coat on, okay? But you don't zip it up. It's really cold outside, but you don't zip it up. And you're just warm. Your shoulders are warm, your back is warm, your belly is warm, your arms are warm. Those are the appendages that get cold the soonest. If that's warm, then you don't care if a gust of wind hits you here. You're still going to stay warm. So I'm a builder that kind of keeps a little bit open and a little bit sealed, as much insulation as I can, but I want it breathable, which is why I like Rockwool as a product. So I could talk forever on that subject. Let's see here. What are the best moments to pause a build if trying to build up cash? I've heard after a foundation is poured, then after drying, and then you can pace it as you go, as you want. Um, I start and stop many times during the course of the project. For example, I'm trying to build a cabin for my family up north, and we've got the land almost paid off, probably next week. We've got the engineering done; it's all paid off. We've got the architectural all done; it's all paid off. We have the septic and perk test all done. We have the geotech report all done and paid off. We've also paid off the water meter, but they haven't installed it yet, so I got to get them on that. So now all that's done, and if the land gets paid off next week, we've got 6 things that are under our belt that are paid off. The real caveat is you need to save between 50 and 40,000 for a foundation, depending upon the foundation you're going to get. And that's your big chunk. Your excavation's a big chunk, and your framing is a big chunk. And you can spread those out. I don't like to see a foundation go too long, especially through the winter or 2 winters. And keep in mind, most building departments will give you a year to build a home, and they'll give you multiple extensions that are 6 months, some 3 months, but just a 6 month extension. And you can extend it to 2 or 3 years. And I've seen that many, many times. How many times have you seen in the country, many places where there's a basement and they capped the basement with like a deck and they just had stairs going down into the basement and they lived in there? They never finished the upstairs. So it's possible. I don't think a lot of building departments would allow for that now. Maybe some rural areas they would, but they don't like that because it has a stigma to the community, and so you might not want to find out how far you can go. But I've seen owner builders go 14 months, 24 months, even longer than that. They just get the extension, and as long as something's happening on the job site, the inspectors aren't going to knock you for that. So I hope that helps you. Best way to pause. I like to get the roof roofed. That means my plumber comes in and puts the ventilation in. I can have my electrician come in later, but I want to get that roof penetrated. And even if I have ventilation for gas and HVAC and plumbing, if I have all my vents through, I want to get that roof done and completed. So not just dried in, but roofed. The dried in is only good for a couple of weeks if you have the wrong, even if you have a good product. I've seen some products last longer, but then the wind starts to flap that up, and then you're wasting more money to keep it dried in. So get it as far as you can, the roof, and then slow down. Do some stuff inside here and there, and take your time. Great question. I have the same questions for Keith. So when I was looking, let's see here. What is the range for per square foot framing labor? Good question. You won't believe me if I tell you this, but the range for framing is anywhere from $7 to north of $35 a square foot, depending upon your market, depending upon the complexity of the home, depending upon the complexity of the roof pitch, on everything. Right now, I've got a home going up, and I'm paying $14 a square foot for that. I could have gotten him down to $10 or $11 a square foot, but then I lose him as a subcontractor because he's that good. I want to make sure I keep him in my wheelhouse. I've paid north of $26 a square foot up north. In my area, it's between $7 and $14 a square foot. In California, up and down the state, it could be mid-20s. Right now, you can probably get some framers in California and maybe other places for the high teens. But you want to find out. The other thing to find out is in my area, we pay only per square foot for the finished livable space, not the garage. But in California and Nevada and other places, framers are going to include the square footage of the garage as part of the whole thing. So you want to ask around and find out. And then you're going to want to, if you get the framer to bid, you're going to say, I want you to bid total framing, all labor, and include all the nails. They don't have to include the straps or the hold downs, just all the nails. And you do that for a reason, because if the framer is framing your home and you're supplying all the nails, then they're just going to order excess and they may just walk off with some. So if they know that they're using their own nails and they're paying for the nails, they're going to be frugal on the use of those nails. So some framers actually include the framing, but there's a few of them that do that. There's a student of mine in California. Her name's Olga. Hey, hi, Olga. I don't know if she's listening, but she's got a framer who's included all of the framing package. So something to think about. Yes, 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 David. Do not tell subs what you budgeted. Don't ever do that, because it's kind of like use it or lose it. They're going to say, man, I budgeted this, but I gave my budget for here. I got to use it. Don't ever do that. If you do, lie about it. Just tell them that you're 2,000 less. I love to do that, but my budget is only 2,000 or 1,500 or $800 less. Can you match that? That's all I have in the budget. You may have more. I don't like to browbeat people down, but I kind of know how hungry they are, and then I also know how good they are. I don't want to take advantage of people, but I want to bargain as best I can. So right now, I could have got the framing down to 13 or 12, but he's my only framer, and he's dedicated to me, and he doesn't use it. He doesn't work for anybody else, and I keep him sufficiently busy. And I knew that I was going to have 2 or 3 weeks without work, and it worked out just great for him. So he's going to be up there on full month framing something. Keith, do you do work with your clients by modifying a pre-existing plan in your back pocket, or do you always recommend working with an architect? I work with my architect, but I redline the heck out of plans to make sure that they accommodate for basic needs. And my architect I use is just phenomenal. But if you have I have some red lines on my plans, and I have changes, and I have a list of changes as well. So I give that to my framer, and I tell him, here's the changes. Make sure they're stapled to the plan, and make sure you transpose those changes on the plans and they're redlined. So I don't necessarily go to an architect for every red line, every change order. If it's structural and it's a structural change, then I have to get that redone like I've done on a recent job, and then I have to resubmit that with the county or the city. But I've gotten away with that too. Some of them didn't see the change in the framing or the structural, so therefore I don't have my structural engineer make that change. You can save a lot of money by doing that if it's not too complicated. Alex says hi Alex. There is a book, Who Moved My Cheese? Great short read. Yeah, it's a great book. Read that book. See, look up, no vertically. Let's see. Modifying a pre-existing plan. I don't know what that question is there. Look up 2 homes built 75 years ago. What type of person or company do I hire for them to advise me? Yes, here's what's needed, or no, not worth it. Talk with a realtor and ask them to give them their best home inspector. That's an older guy that has some experience. I've seen a lot of general contractors exit the field and they become inspectors. So you want to get an old inspector who's been around for a while, and they'll be more honest with you. Builder, it depends on the kind of person you run into. You can ask them to go through it, and you tell them, I'll pay $100 if you give me a full report. But then a good home inspector will give you an even better report, because that's what they're paid to do. So maybe a really good home inspector can do that, and they have to be licensed or certified in a couple of areas. In my state, you do not have to be certified to be a home inspector. You just go and inspect homes and give people a report. There's no certification required. So be very careful of that as well. They want to have some real experience in the trades, and they just went into home inspections to kind of offset their cost of living and not have to carry a belt anymore. With the skyrocketing cost of closed cell foam, how are you managing costs? Did you find a more cost-effective alternative? I do not use closed cell insulation. I don't like it. I don't like synthetics in my homes. I'm a real natural person. I'd rather have a natural rock, hemp or rock wool, or even fiberglass, or even blow-in insulation, which is a fiberglass or matted, newspaper that's fireproof. Something natural that I can put into the home. I'm not a fan of synthetics and the off-gassing of synthetics. And if there's a fire, that stuff will smoke black and it will just melt, and you'll lose all the integrity. However, you take rock wool and you put a match to it, it's not going to burn. It's not going to lose its integrity. It's going to hold that. So I'm more more inclined with that than I am sell blow-in or closed-cell foam. Um, TKS says, great answer. I'm glad that worked out for you. Look Up says, I like to make those two homes for aging in place because of location. Uh, for aging in place. Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. See here. It's here. Let's finish up here with these last questions. I'm running out of time here. I've got to get on a traco and dig a trench. Linda says, I have a 500 square foot front porch on a 2,100 square foot home. The framer wants 15,000 just for the porch. Does that sound reasonable? No, that does not. If you add it up there, 500 square feet, 500 square feet, actually you divide that by 15, divided by 500, that's $30 a square foot. That's really high. That's high for a lot of states and a lot of regions. And he should be closer to, depending upon your market, she should be below $20 a square foot. That's really high. Stefan asks, so what do you think of air exchange units for tighter homes? If you build a tight home and you're sealing off that tight home, you have to have makeup air. And if you have to have makeup air, you have to have electric dependency, meaning if that home goes a sufficient amount of time without makeup air, you're going to start to smell it inside. It's going to be stagnant air. It's not going to breathe. It's kind of like my clothes. If I go out and I'm working out, I'm sweating under my arms, but I relax for a little bit and I dry off, then I'm not going to have that buildup of moisture, which is not going to have all that smell. And it's when the moisture can sit around and there's no air moving over it where it starts to collect bacteria. And when it does that, it starts to smell. So just think of a home like your own body. You want your body to heal. If you cut yourself, you want that bleeding to stop, but you want it in the open air to fight infection. So let's see here. Let's get through these last questions here. I got a few more minutes and we're going to hang up. Can a no threshold shower be built on a wood floor? Yes, but it's very hard. And you have to have a framer who knows what they're doing. And you have to have an approval from the engineer that you're going to cut into the floor trusses below. And then he's going to indicate to you what you need to do to rebuild and build up the strength of that truss for that home. That's my brother trying to call me. It can be done. It's hard. I've done it before. I've seen it done, and I've done it before on a build up north. But I build a lot of slab on grade, and it's so much easier to just do a 2-inch recess into the concrete and do it on the slab. But it's much harder with a frame structure, but you can do it. All right. It asks wood floor with tile. Yes, it can. Pam Jackson asks, any idea what an architect would charge for an 800 square foot home in California? I can tell you right now what that would cost. It's 800 times maybe 150. The low end would be $1,200. The high end would be $2,500. A lot of good draftsmen and architects, typically, they'll charge a per square foot price. It could be $1.50, $1.75 a square foot, or it could be higher. Engineers the same way, but that's not true for all areas. I've seen engineers charge $5, $7, $10 a square foot. I've seen architects charge the same because they think they're worth it, but they're not. My architect, who's phenomenal, always busy, keeps his prices very competitive. He's $1.75 a square foot. So, elder inspector, good, great info. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, sir, from Lookup. Slow and Click. Thoughts on building a garage with living space for general contractor and then cash flow, the main. That's a real plus. In fact, I'm going to be doing that for a client, and we're going to actually build this structure here that I showed you, which is a post beam structure. We're going to build that for a client, and they're going to live in the upstairs while I build the main home. He's a car, likes to work on cars, and I talked him into this rather than a steel frame building or a barn dominium home, which is all that commercial look. He's going to have a post beam structure, and it's going to look gorgeous on his home. Absolutely stunning. So Go for a little beauty sometimes. It's going to pay dividends. Um, David says $30. Yeah, that is high for that framing one above. Um, Greenville, South Carolina. There's a post beam structure company. It's called the Barnyard. Check them on YouTube. The Barnyard. They build structures like that. For any owner with low to medium experience with building, what work on a job would you recommend not doing? Framing. I would not recommend framing, and I would not recommend insulation, and I would not recommend painting. You will spend 5 times the amount of time to do all those than it would take for someone else to do it. And you've got to tell yourself that your time is worth a lot more than 3 times the amount of time it takes somebody else to do the job. Cleaning up on the job site is what you want to do. You want to maintain the job site, make it flow right. If there's anything that, if you're good at something and you've been doing it for a while and you're confident in it, then of course try to do that. But if you have absolutely no experience, just keep the site clean. I'm telling you, that's going to pay dividends right there. It says, last question here. Let's see here. I had one more question that came in on my email. It said, see, oh, here it is. Came in my email. How far down is the worst excavation you have had? I've had an 8-foot excavation. However, I did a full budget on a major project that was going to be a 16-foot overX. I mean, we would have to dig down 16 feet, remove everything, and recompact it, not with native soils, but soils from a different location, because the native soils were terrible. I ended up not doing the job because that got to be so cost prohibitive that they ended up not doing it. And I warned my clients in advance that I think we have bad soils here, but they went ahead and paid me my retainer to go through that whole process anyway. But I told them, because look at the subdivision next door, a lot of the sidewalks are buckling because they had collapsible soil. It was really, really bad. So if you're going after soils and you're wanting to watch out for over excavation issues, you want a house. I just did a barn for a garage for a client, did the excavation on it. I had an 8-inch overX. That's it. Sweet. You don't want to get beyond a 2 or 3 foot overX and recompaction. That starts putting your cost out of whack for you. So something to watch out for. And best work you can do for a site: bring your subs coffee in the morning. Yep. On a cold morning, bring them some coffee. Donuts, they like that because they're burning calories. And if they're burning calories on a cold day, man, bring them some donuts and hot chocolate even. I did that on about in November of last year. They loved it. Let's see. Nothing else here. Love it. Thanks, Lone Click. Let's end there with live chat. I've got to get on a traco. I'm kind of late and behind. If you have any questions, please subscribe to the channel. Leave them here. I'll try to screenshot them and save them for next week. And then I can answer those questions even if you can't be here for live chat. I love you guys. Thanks. This is great. Thumbs up, share, like. That's going to really help with the channel. I'll keep doing this every Thursday at 5 Mountain Standard Time, which is 4 Pacific Time, and 6 and 7 Central and Eastern Time. So I'll be here every Thursday, rain or shine. So you guys take care. This is Keith with How to Build Your Own Home. You guys take care.